What's up, everybody? Dan Warby with Keller Williams, West Ventura County here. Hope everybody's doing great. I think over the last few years, we've all gotten used to adapting to big changes quickly, that's for sure. With that in mind, this week I wanted to go over some of the new changes that are already in place or are in the works so far from the Biden administration. There's been changes or are proposed changes to taxes for first-time homebuyers, the FHA, local zoning regulations, and the Strengthening the Community Reinvestment Act. I think what you'll notice though is like every new administration at the federal level, there's just not a ton of tools in the toolbox to influence or change the housing market. So let's take a look at what the new administration is signaling regarding the real estate market and what levers they do intend to pull on. First, there's a new first-time homebuyer credit. This is up to $15,000 for people who close on their first home. This isn't like the down payment assistance programs we talked about last week. If you missed that video, do go back and check it out. There's over 400 programs out there to help you with a down payment on a new home. You'll still need to come up with your down payment and closing costs to purchase, but now there will be a tax credit you can recoup after you file. I'm not super sure what effect this will have on the overall market in the short term. I think if anything, we'll see a little more demand than a little upwards pressure on prices. I think some people will feel more comfortable dipping into savings knowing that they can pay themselves back out of a tax credit and jump into the market. Second up, the Biden administration wants to bulk up the Strengthening the Community Reinvestment Act. The Strengthening the Community Reinvestment Act was passed in 1977, and it was mainly used to encourage lending in underprivileged and low-income areas. I can see a lot of opportunity for that in our local market in transitioning areas like the Taco District, Port Hueneme, and parts of Oxnard. But this is a tricky area because you can start to get into regulatory ideas that caused the S&L crisis back in the 80s. And we really don't know much about the actual policies and what they're going to be, but I hope we're talking about streamlining some of the bureaucracy around urban renewal projects and not a big general deregulatory push to allow more access to the mortgage market for non-banks. That traditionally hasn't gone great in the past. Third, the Biden administration has signaled they really want to push new construction and adding inventory to the market. Ultimately, the lack of inventory has been what's driving the market dynamics for over a decade now. We lost out on a decade's worth of building in the Great Recession, and we simply don't have enough units to sell to meet the demand. But it's hard for me to see what can be done about that at the federal level. They've talked a lot about outdated zoning laws, but those are almost entirely controlled at the local level. We might see some incentive programs for local governments to reform their zoning laws, but it's not really clear to me how that would work. The bigger problem I see is that the NIMBY and environmental concerns about new constructions aren't going away, and there's almost nothing you can do about it at the federal level. Fourth, the Biden administration wants to encourage banks to get back into FHA lending. They do have a lot more influence here to do that than in building regulations. Maybe I'm wrong, I'm not a lender, but I've noticed that there's a lot more overlap between conventional financing and FHA these days. So I'm not sure how much that's going to trickle down into the housing market. You can do similar down payments and non-lender paid PMI conventionally these days, but again, I'm not a lender. So one thing they could possibly do though is reduce PMI premiums. I bet that would actually those have been more profitable than they thought, given a real bullish market and over the past few years. So we'll keep an eye out for that. That could really spur a lot of refinancing activity. So that's basically it so far. The first-time homebuyer credit, getting banks back into FHA lending, more new construction, really getting behind the Strengthening the Community's Reinvestment Act. Ultimately, nothing really earth-shattering or alarming. That's kind of the point. There's just not a ton that can be done at the federal level to influence the housing market because so much of it is really influenced by these arcane local regulations, which I guess I should be thankful for, because the deep local knowledge of those is part of what keeps food on my table. But it's also what makes real estate such a good investment for everyday people. It's not a very liquid asset, and market changes, politics, etc., don't have an outsized impact on the value. Anyway, I hope all that helps. Let me know what you're hoping to see from this administration in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more local Ventura County content, and have an awesome rest of your week, everybody.